Welcome to the first lecture on business process mining. Now, before we start discussing business process mining itself, it is important that we lay some groundwork. And in order to do that, we will first begin by discussing what is a business process. Let's start with an example. A warehouse that buys and sells grocery products. They buy them from local producers and then they sell them on to, let's say, local supermarkets. In such an organization, there is a number of activities that are going to go on daily. For example, loading a truck, unloading a truck, or issuing invoices, scheduling deliveries, checking and confirming purchase orders, and so on. Now, while this picture here is a bit of a mess, if the company is small enough, let's say 10 people, smaller number of services, then certainly you can manage things like that. A single manager of the company could easily understand everything that is going on, basically even enumerate all the tasks that are happening. However, once the organizations become larger, let's say hundreds of people, thousands of people, then this kind of a chaotic picture, it no longer is useful. It becomes unmanageable. So let's see how we can do better. One way to do it better would be to take an organization and just take all the activities that happen there, all the tasks, and group them by function. Lump everything that deals with finances into the function of financial department, everything that deals with, let's say, warehouse, lump it into the warehouse department, and you're done. This can be done, it can work, it can help, definitely, but it has some issues. It has some limitations, let's say. To understand those limitations, let's think a bit more how an organization actually works. So an organization, it basically takes a set of inputs, here represented as assets and partners, and it turns them into something that is needed by the customer. So the organization is going to fulfill some need, maybe produce something, some goods, and sell them to the customers. Now, in such a functional view, it kind of hides away what a specific task, let's say in the financial department, what kind of a customer need it's actually fulfilling. A better way of organizing those activities, those tasks, would be to organize them into business processes. A business process in this case would basically be a sequence of events or a sequence of tasks that takes the organization from the inputs into the outputs that are required or needed by the customer. And you will notice on this picture that actually the business processes themselves, they are kind of overlapping the functions. So it's not going to be limited to just the financial department, but instead it's going to be a collaboration between the financial department and the warehouse management. And possibly the legal department might even get involved, depending on the process again. But a common theme here is that every process is going to fulfill some kind of a need and ultimately serve the customer of the organization. And every task or every activity in that process serves a specific need as well as a result, and it's going to be clear why that activity exists in the first place. Let's come back to our example, the warehouse. Previously, I had this chaotic picture of what is going on in that warehouse, but we can just take it and organize the activities that we had into business processes. One process would be when the supermarket itself wants to get some groceries to sell to their customers. So they would send a purchase order. The warehouse is going to check and confirm it. They are going to package products, load the truck, and so on until the payment is made. So the goods are shipped to the supermarket and a monetary payment is received in return. It is a clear and a simple process, but in this warehouse example, we had more activities. So another process might be where the warehouse itself is going to try to procure some groceries from local producers, and they would do it wholesale in large quantities. And that process would start by issuing a purchase order to the producer and end with when the goods actually arrive. Of course, this is still an example, so we would need to be more concrete now. So what is a business process? A business process is a chain of events, activities, and decisions involving a number of actors and objects, triggered by a need and leading to an outcome that is of value to a customer. Now you will notice that there is quite a bit of terms that are colored in red on this slide. For example, and those terms are quite important, so let's go over them. Events. Event is something that happens without you doing any work. So if someone sends you a purchase order, they have compiled it, someone else has delivered it, it just arrives at your doorstep. You didn't do any work for it to arrive. That would be an event. An activity instead would be something where now you are doing the work. So for example, when you go through the purchase order to figure out if everything they want to purchase is actually in stock. Also, there are decisions. In most business processes, there are multiple decision points. For example, let's say that with the purchase order, your customer asks for a significant discount. Then you can make the decision, are you going to approve that purchase order or not? And that would be a simple decision point in a process. Of course, a process is going to involve some actors and objects, where an actor is basically someone who is carrying out work in that process. Usually a person, but it can be also an automated machine or an IT system, for example. And of course, objects. Objects are the artifacts that are managed by the business process or that play some important role in that process. An object, for example, would be the document of the purchase order. Then, of course, every business process is triggered by a need, so there has to be a reason why you would want to carry out all the tasks or all the activities that are mentioned in that business process. It has to fulfill some need. And it has to lead to some kind of an outcome, and we want to set it up such that the outcome is of value to a customer. Now in the literature, you can see multiple examples. For example, order to cash or procure to pay. And those two are actually what we saw in the warehouse example that we had previously, where the warehouse was going to either order some, let's say, groceries from the local producers, which would be procure to pay, or the supermarket would order some groceries from the warehouse, which would be, from the perspective of the warehouse itself, order to cash. Additionally, we have application to approval, very common process. Think, for example, something like, let's say, a loan application. You receive a loan application and eventually you hope to approve it. Of course, the final one is issue the resolution. Think, for example, something like a IT help desk, where, let's say, you have a problem with your computer let's say, work computer. You file a ticket, and hopefully they will resolve whatever issues you are having, and as a result, you will become a happy customer again. Now, you'll notice that all of those examples, they're kind of worded in a positive way. Something is approved, an issue is resolved, and so forth. However, this is not always the case. So we have to kind of look at what are the possible outcomes of a process. Let's take an example where my washing machine doesn't work. A very simple process. It is basically issue the resolution, where we start off with a customer who is angry. They call the call center or the service center. The service center is going to dispatch a technician to actually check what is wrong with the washing machine. The technician might figure out that a part is faulty. There is an issue with some parts of the machine, and those need to be replaced. So they will contact the parts store to order the parts. As a result, you might have an insurance company that gets involved because the customer doesn't want to pay for those parts. Let's say the washing machine is under warranty, or the customer has a specific type of insurance that covers also home appliances. Once the insurance company gets involved, now at this point, there are both positive and negative outcomes. A negative outcome that would make the customer happy, would make the customer, let's say, more angry, would be something that we call value reducing. A negative outcome is always considered value reducing. An example of that might be that the fault is not repaired in a timely manner, or the fault is repaired but customer pays more than expected, and as a result the customer is not happy. What we want to do, we want to avoid those negative outcomes and instead set up our processes in such a way that the more positive outcomes we have, the better. Positive outcomes in this case would be that the fault is repaired immediately with minor intervention, and the fault is repaired, and the repair itself is going to be covered by warranty, so no cost to the customer. And that would turn an angry customer into a happy customer. This is going to lead us actually to business process management itself, how to manage the outcomes of the process and what we have to keep in mind while doing so. And this we will cover in the next part of this lecture.